I'm in the business of wanting to resurrect that triumphant beast in you.
Welcome to The Boundless Body, the podcast with a somatic doctor interviewing innovative thinkers about their perspectives relating to the arts and sciences of therapy. Discover The Boundless Body.
Back to the mystery.
So we're here with Jion Blonstein. Welcome, Jion, to The Boundless Body. Really
Thank
good
you
to
for
have
having
you.
me.
Yeah, really good to have you here. So here's a little intro, and then we'll get started with our conversation. So Jion Blonstein combines his 22 years expertise as a Zen therapist focused on trauma and as a life coach with the wisdom of a Zen master. Jion also offers support during life's transitions as a dying companion. His work transcends borders, attracting a diverse group of students worldwide. Among them are accomplished professionals like therapists, teachers, artists, scientists, astronauts, programmers, as we discussed before, athletes, and leaders. So Jion's path has been shaped by years spent as a Zen monk in Japanese Zen monasteries. He brings this experience along with his creative pursuits as an author, Zen therapy, and Koans, which I'm really interested about. I want to hear a little bit more about that. A singer, Bach, and Zen. Are you a classically trained musician?
No.
Okay. But we were talking about, Drew and I were talking about how Bach is the master of fugues. And in the episode with Manu Bazzano, I don't know if you've heard about him, but we got to talking about musical ontology and the fugue of Bach, and we're just lovers of Bach. So you also are interested in Butoh dance as both a teacher and a performer, which I'd like to talk a little bit more about. And all of this informs his approach to Zen and therapy. So welcome. Really good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Yeah. So I'm a big lover and advocate for movement, spontaneous movement, dance. I've been a dancer for 25 years and just really love the art of dance. Maybe we can start there. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Butoh and how it informs your therapy practice.
Well, maybe you turn on first some music so I can dance for you, and then we talk about it.
Okay, let's see here. Maybe I can do a beatbox. I'm a horrible beatboxer.
Great. That was part of the beatbox. I'm a horrible beatbox. So, talking about the imposter syndrome, let's talk about that. That's something that everyone nowadays talks about, right? And social media is full of that. The imposter. What is the imposter? How can you overcome that? But we can talk about it later. You asked about Butoh. So for me, it was natural transition from Zen to Butoh because I noticed that just sitting straight without moving, it makes you kind of dehumanized, if you only meditate. And for me, especially, because I grew up in a difficult childhood situation, I haven't learned so much about expressing and being in touch with my emotions. So Zen was kind of feeding into the trauma in a way. It was making that even stronger. So I kind of detached from my emotions, my emotional world, my humanness. And so then Butoh gave me this kind of possibility to feel my emotions, to get in touch, and also to embody them, right? To not just feel the emotions like in therapy, like feel the emotion or talk about the emotion like in the analytical therapy form, but also express it, show it, not just to yourself, also to other people, right? So this is very important to learn not just to express emotions for yourself or feel them, but also to show it to the others and not to feel ashamed for that, for being emotional being, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, Butoh is just that, a therapy way, and it came actually from a way of coping with Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, right? So it was kind of a therapeutical way to go about it.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean about sitting with an erect spine. There can be sometimes a rigidity that can go with sitting over many, many hours. That was a yoga practitioner, yoga teacher for many years. And there's something quite linear and about yoga as well, where you have an upright spine and a lot of the postures are running a linear position. And so I really appreciated how dance can bring in these circular forms. It really helped me to kind of loosen my rigidities and loosen my pelvis, bring in the sense of humor a little bit more. What are some principles in Butoh that you teach? Because you teach the art as well. I'm kind of betting that the listeners don't know that much about Butoh. Maybe you could just walk us through a couple principles or something.
Well, I'm not going to really talk about Butoh right now because I'm actually not really focusing or never focused on the art of Butoh. I used it only as a means for therapy for myself and for the other people. And this is kind of in my nature to always take parts of things, learn it in a way by doing it, not by learning with the brain, but really practicing. This is my work, my learning style. I have to practice it, I have to do it. And then implement it into my work, into my way. And so for me, the principle of Butoh is just basic, feeling yourself, closing your eyes, feeling yourself from within, and getting in touch with everything that we usually wouldn't get in touch with, like resistances, fears, anxiety, all kind of destructive emotions, but also ideas, death. What is death? What is ugliness? What is disgusting? What is how express disgusting? Like, right? Exactly. Exactly. So expressing that or foolishness, what is being fool? And allowing yourself to be a fool, not just in front of yourself, but in front of other people. So yeah, like that, and really being ugly, being stupid, being all the things that we don't want to be, not just in front of ourselves, but also in front of other people. And so then we suppress that, and whenever we get public, we're afraid of being exposed. But it's of course an unconscious fear of us. We are not aware of that. Then we wonder why I'm so afraid. Yeah, because you're afraid of being exposed, being a fool. So a lot of the fear will disappear if we just practice this to allow ourselves to be who, to be all these parts. Yeah. So this is how I use it. And then with the whole body expressing, but also sexuality, right? The Butoh can also be sexual. It can be destructive. It can be violence. It can be rape. It can be anything. So in Butoh, we allow ourselves to connect to the human unconsciousness, not just to our own unconsciousness, but the collective human unconsciousness, and then express it. So we are not just healing ourselves, whatever healing means, but also we connect and transform and work with the whole humanity through Butoh, and in a way through any good therapy. That's how I see it.
For individuals or couples interested in therapy or counseling, you can sign up for a free consultation or our newsletter for more information on integrative therapeutic modalities.
That's beautiful. I'm thinking about the healing power of transgression, because there's so many cultural norms that can, press in on the body and prevent it from being explorative, preventing it from being potent and vital and having range. So I really appreciate that there's this transgressive spirit that you're nurturing as part of the healing process. I think it's just radically important. I talk a lot about the social mask, and I was really appreciating how you were just moving your facial muscles, just bringing variability, because there can just be this mask that we've been given by society. In different societies, different families give different masks. But
My
sometimes I
face
think
is a mask. My face is a mask as well. So
Yeah.
talking about masks, many people come, and it's also connected to the imposter and being authentic. So many topics at one. If many people say, "Oh, I want to get rid of my mask. I want to become more authentic," right? And I want to be less imposter, feeling this imposter-like feeling. So in the moment you want to get rid of the mask, you already have another mask, because it's impossible to get rid completely of the mask. As a human being, you always have a mask. Like when I meet you, I have a mask. My face is a mask. I cannot rip it off. And even if I rip it off, still there is something. That too is a mask. So you find always something. And we have to, rather than overcoming the mask or trying to become more authentic or trying to become less imposter, we have to learn actually to first appreciate our masks, appreciate being imposter, appreciate being the fool, appreciate being the everything, accept it first before we can move forward. And that's very difficult for people who want to overcome and become better, become more authentic, because that's the mindset in itself is already inauthentic. I want to have more, I want to be better. That's the mindset usually. And so what I teach, number one, is to first see fully our mask. How am I right now? What is the mask right now? Can I appreciate it? Can I have no, as little as possible, resistance to that mask? Right now, I meet you. I'm not like that with my wife. I'm not like that with my son. When I'm with my son, I am with my son. I am with my son. When I'm with my wife, I am with my wife. When I'm with you, that's new to me. Actually, we are exploring that, and it's fun. So I am with you, and each time I meet someone, I become that, and it's always new. It's always fresh. Is that authentic or is it inauthentic? It is inauthentic if I play it, but it's authentic if I have no resistance to the flow of what happens in that moment. So just being like a mirror and just allowing things to come to me and then reflect it back and then creating that together. Maybe it sounds a little bit abstract, but yeah.
No, it works for me, that idea, kind of asking ourselves what mask am I wearing, and not coming from a judgmental standpoint, and not trying to go beyond the mask, but being a shapeshifter, nurturing mobility, nurturing the capacity to change shape and be and move and know which mask is on right now, so that then we can have creative potential, we can create together, and it's just not one thing. We know what we do our best, right, to know what we're about in the moment.
That is the first and important step. So to come to that is already quite difficult, to that level that you just described. And then the last step is to completely forget about it as much as you can.
Well, it reminds me of the practice of koans. You wrote this book about koans, and you related it to therapy in this early discussion with it. By the way, have you heard of Manu Bazzano?
Who is that?
He's a Zen and therapy guy. He wrote a wonderful book. I just wanted to tune in and see if
the guy you interviewed before?
Yeah, and a couple episodes ago, and we were talking about koans. And he mentioned early koan. One of his faves is just this simple question: "What is this?" Which I love. It's so simple, but so elegant and complex, and can go so many different directions. What is this? So I'm just wondering, if you have
what is this?
What is this? What is this? What is this?
Wow. Boom.
Yeah. So, I'm wondering if do you have any koans that you could, or a koan? Let's just start with one before we get too crazy here. that you could bring into this space for us to reflect on for a moment?
You just brought it up. What is this? It's a perfect koan. That's actually from Korean Zen tradition. Sung-san always talked about it, like always being a question. What is this? This is like typical Korean Zen practice. You don't need more than that in the beginning. So like it's an initial koan. It's especially for the Western mind. It's a very good koan to create great doubt. So in Zen, we say we have three pillars of Zen: great doubt, great faith, and great power. And I think it's three, right? So you have this, and in order to practice Zen, many people have faith. They may have power, but doubt is often missing. And doubt is the ability to be self-critical. So it's the ability of being self-critically aware. And that is the ability not to just see yourself in the mirror to, oh, this is me, there, Brian, this is me. It's also the ability, is that me, actually? And maybe that's not me. I'm not sure that's me. So how many people actually look into the mirror and not just see themselves, but also see, question that what they see, right? We don't necessarily even have the time to do that. Many people have to work so hard to just make a living, to support their children, their families. So there is also a time factor which is missing, right? So modern societies are meant to keep you busy in a way. So what is this? Is a great koan for a start. If it is actually the koan which Socrates was talking about, I know that I know nothing. I know that I know nothing. Many atheists, people who have this faith of atheism, they say, I know that I know nothing. But I know that I know nothing is actually not a knowledge at all. It's a state of mind. It's the state of mind of what is this? I don't know. And if you go deep enough and let go of all knowledge, then you start to feel this deeper knowing, not knowledge, but knowing. And it's not you anymore. And this is what the koan is about, to forget yourself. But before you can forget yourself, you have to study everything who you think you are. You have to study everything who you think the life is. Everything where you touch, everything where you identify yourself with. And we don't even see how much we identify ourselves with so many things we don't even notice, like our gender. So many people nowadays talk about gender identity, right? But actually, in Zen, from the Zen perspective, we can be any gender or no gender. So it doesn't matter. We have to realize what is beyond gender, what is beyond our identity completely. What is that which sees myself as a man or a woman or transgender or any form? What is it what sees? What is it what hears right now? What is aware? What of awareness? What is aware of awareness right now? So, what is aware of awareness right now? If you want to go deep, if you can come to that already, what is aware of awareness right now? Sorry, I'm repetitive. Am I repetitive?
The rhythm, the rhythmic element of repetition. I think it brings us into the right hemisphere of the brain. I think it brings us into this
exactly
kind of dream.
Why are you explaining my technology?
Well, because it was starting to sound like you were succumbing to imposter syndrome.
Questioning myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about applying this question, what is this, to trauma? Because, trauma has just propagated as this conversation that's just kind of taking over everything. When I apply that question, what is this, to like somebody in my office that's going through a trauma, and I just, rather than the labels and all the fancy talk about ventral vagal and I like to call it polybagel theory, because there's a lot of bagels involved. Um, Running it through all these frameworks, scientific frameworks, clinical frameworks. I think that it can be really freeing, right, to apply this question to the issue of trauma.
Yeah. Trauma is really a complex subject. I wish that more people would talk about it. I don't see that, but maybe you need to introduce me to your community. So, I don't know where you are hanging out. In maybe so you mean on social media or in news? Where do you see that a lot of people talk about
Well, I live in California, so if you turn around too fast, you'll bump into a trauma therapist.
it? All right, I see. I didn't know that. That's interesting. For me, maybe what is interesting to know about my work is that I don't really focus. I work with trauma, but I don't focus on trauma at all. And trauma is not my main subject, or healing trauma, because actually, from my experience, it is very easy to work with trauma. It's very easy to heal a trauma. So let's say you have a car accident and you have some kind of trauma from that. We just go into that experience, we go into the body, we go into the emotions, we go into whatever imagination you had in that moment, whatever happened, and you kind of put it into your subconsciousness. You look at it, and with time that goes away. You're right. Whatever trauma this is, whatever happened to you, we can work with that this way, because it's very simple. You already find that if something happened in your childhood, we go into your childhood, we look at what happened, we work on it. Okay, so the trauma itself is not a big deal, and the older you get, what happens is also that trauma usually also dissipates with time by itself. So that's also something about trauma. And what I focus on is the imprint of trauma. So not the trauma itself. And what is, you can imagine, like if you have a stone and you have a wood, the wood is your awareness, your consciousness, your psyche. So all what you are, right? And then you have the stone. The stone is the trauma. You put the stone on the wood for a long time. So let's say you had a childhood trauma, now you're 30 years old. What happens is when you take away the stone, the trauma, you will have an imprint in the wood from the stone, right? Because the stone was for a very long time settling on that wood, pressing into the wood. And so it creates an imprint, right? And so this imprint, what can that be? For example, behavioral imprints, like let's say you were abused in your childhood, and so then you have a low confidence, let's say, very simple. And then uh, even the trauma is gone, you still have the low confidence. You still don't feel loved, or you don't allow love to come into your life, and things like that. Just to make it simple, right? Or if, let's say, something bad, if you're a woman and you were raped, let's say, then you will be afraid of man. Even if you talk about the trauma, you solve it. The imprint of being afraid of man will still be there, or masculinity will be there. And so I'm more interested into the imprints and less into the trauma itself. Yeah.
Maybe you could take us into an example, just talk a little bit about your practice and what sorts of things you would be doing in your practice to work with an imprint. Maybe you could pluck a case example out of your mind.
Do you have one? Do you have a trauma?
Oh, yeah. I did listen to one of your Instagram posts that was on birth trauma. So I think circumcision is always a solid one. Like I was circumcised, like within that window of just, coming into the world, welcome to the world. Here's a scalpel. And I did discover many years later when I was doing my own trauma healing work that there was something very significant there around circumcision stuff. And I think that's fairly common for men.
Interesting. I never had any client talking about that trauma before. But
well, a lot of people don't make the connection. You almost need a community like the perinatal and perinatal psychology community is big into this, and it makes intuitive sense once you start to think about it. But you kind of got to get the prompt from somebody to start thinking about it, which I did. I had a practitioner that was big into, birth trauma and stuff like that. And actually, honestly, what they did is they showed a video of a circumcision, and it just plunged me into like this. I was a wreck for a few days because it just brought me into some primordial memory that I didn't even know was there.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I do not focus on the trauma. So for me, when I work with someone, I don't necessarily ask for the trauma, except if it comes in the session. And what leads to trauma is usually fear, any kind of resistance. So the behavioral patterns, that is what I look at. And then we just walk the trail, follow the trail. And at some point, we usually come to some event as well. Either it is your own trauma, or it can be also a transgenerational trauma, something related to experiences of your parents or your grandparents and so forth. Or it can be even, but that is really hard to get to usually with majority of people. It can be a national trauma, so the trauma of the society you grew up in and identify with, right? It can be religious trauma, so if you identify with some religious group or something like that, so that could be for the Jewish or the Muslim or the Christians, right? So Buddhist, or Hindu, or whatever. There are many religions, so it can be also related to that as well. Yeah, so I don't focus on specific traumas. I would just go with you into yourself and find the resistance, find whatever right now happens in you. And sometimes just talking like right now, and then suddenly something comes, and then we follow that trail, follow the resistance, look at it, then observe how are you right now behaving around that resistance. What are your cover-ups? What are your coping mechanisms around that resistance that you are aware of right now in your body? And then that leads to further emotions, fear, anxiety, sadness, whatever. And then at some point, so maybe it is a memory, but it doesn't have to be a memory. It's not actually as important. For me, trauma is all about becoming more aware, expanding one's awareness. So if you have a trauma, great, we can use that. Give it to me. We can use it like a way of learning, because that's the easiest way for me to teach you how to serve. If there is no waves, it will be more difficult, right? So then I have to create a wave kind of artificially by triggering you, by doing some magic.
Well, so that would be one answer to what is this when applying it to trauma is it's a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So do you get folks up in gravity moving like you were portraying before, like getting them into Butoh like movements with their face and facilitating movements, getting them up in gravity? Do you do stuff like that? Or
I actually sent them to Butoh.
Ah,
Yeah, because I used to have a dojo in Berlin. I don't have that with my son. I don't have the possibility right now. Also, we moved away from Berlin. So I'm planning to build at some point here also a community, maybe in Romania. Yeah, my wife is Romanian, and to build some temple kind of place where we can practice. But right now I work only online, so I cannot facilitate right now movement classes. So what I do is I just tell them to go to Butoh class. I look where they are at, and then I find a good teacher for them. Yeah.
hmm. Yeah, it's a really good adjunct, getting the body moving, getting them into this space of expression, getting them into that rhythmic space that you're leading me into right now.
I thought you were leading me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like, what is this, the leader?
That's a good question. What is this leader? What is the leader? What is the leader? Please tell me, what is it? Reveal yourself to me, please, right now. Now! Show it! Where are you?
Yeah.
So this is what I always say to my clients. Sorry to cut you, but I didn't cut you. It was the computer actually. So what I say always is that I never actually teach anything. It's the teaching happens in between you and me. So it's the power that I just created right now between Jion and Brian. That's our teacher. That's the Zen master. So when two masters meet, never ever two Zen masters meet, ever. Because whenever two Zen masters meet, there's only one. So that's exactly what it's about, to have this oneness. And ideally, that's what the Zen master is doing. He can create this field of oneness because he is nobody.
It's such a relief. It's such a relief and an alternative, a kind of psycho-spiritual alternative to all this hullabaloo about the imposter syndrome, because the leader becomes a leader through us. Then I don't have to be it or place it onto you, project it onto you to be that thing. It's a creative process.
Imposter syndrome is just an imprint of trauma, of not belonging and becoming an outcast, partially also by society making you an outcast. Because if you think about it, we're all this coming from the same stars. We are all having this wisdom in us. So all the knowledge, all the wisdom is within us. Sure, not everyone can build a car or anything like that, but still, most of the deep knowledge that we share. And I know in Germany there was so many cases of psychiatry where people pretended to be psychiatrists and they were working in a clinic and nobody noticed because they were really good. But they never have studied psychiatry. And then 10 years later, they noticed, oh, this paper was not real. And then they put them in jail. So I don't say it's wrong to put them in jail, but I also say we have to question it. What is that? Why is it that way? So I think that people are born already into what they become in a way. It's just that we don't know it.
I appreciate that you're bringing in the cosmic dimension to the what is this, and there's something beyond all of our labeling and our human attempts to put it into our words and our concepts and everything. But to me, that's the magic of the question, what is this? Is this like, yeah, we're like shaped stardust. This is impossible. Whatever this is, it's impossible.
What means impossible?
Yeah.
What is that impossible?
It doesn't even
It's so
it's just
nice
a
for me.
word, right?
Yeah, but it's not just a word. It's a very powerful word. Impossible. It's such a massage. When I become that word, it's like massaging my whole body. Impossible.
Ah,
Impossible. 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 Here, a bit more impossible here. So good. Such a good impossible. Yes. Words have power. Names have power, right? Everything has power. So this is, we decide if the world is magical or if it's just boring as hell. But I think it's both at the same time.
one of my personal loves is anthropology. I love studying this really rich heritage of human ritual practices and creation mythologies because it's just so rich and imaginative and vibrant, and it's put into action in ritual spaces where there's just bodies that are vital and alive and doing rhythmic stuff and dancing and trancing and all that stuff. The core of a lot of the traditions is to bring to life the creation narrative, bring to life the great magic of creation, like how it came to be. That's brought into the moment through the ritualization. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, so science has this term Big Bang, and it just kind of falls flat as an image.
It's an implosion, actually.
The bottom drops out and everything implodes because there's like, where's the magic in that? Because that's one of the things that I'm reflecting on at the moment is just like science and the scientific framing and naming and all that just doesn't really give us a lived experience of the Big Bang, but it could, I think. I mean, if the Big Bang could massage us too, right? It's like, I'm banging. Whoa, I'm banging. Oh, couple, and then there's a couple of resistant places in there, right? Because there's like, there it is in the diaphragm. Take a breath, and it can bang a little bit more.
Yeah, well, the bang has to also lead to something. If the bang doesn't lead to anything, if it doesn't lead to a cosmic orgasm, then the Big Bang becomes quite stagnated, right? It becomes an inner stagnation and lots of pressure. So you have to, after the Big Bang, you have to just expand. And in the inner world of the inside of the Big Bang within ourselves, I'm not a scientist in the outside world. I'm a scientist of the inside world. So for me, Big Bang means Kundalini. So it means to connect with yourself from within, with your energy body, with your sexual body. Let it flow and let it come up your spine, and then Big Bang. Yeah, enjoy, enjoy, enjoy the Big Bang all the time, over and over and over and over in this monotony, beautiful repetition. And that's what science is also saying nowadays, that the Big Bang was just one of many, and it's just happening over. It's like a breath in and out. And yeah, so this is interesting to me. I actually wanted to become an astronaut myself. Right? So before I came into Zen, when I was a child, I heard about Yuri Gagarin and flying into space, and I dreamed about doing exactly that. And then the first day when I sit in Japan in a monastery, I was sitting for the first time there, and my eyes were closed, and I just experienced this complete darkness and floating in space like that. It was amazing. It's like, wow, I got it.
Yeah.
Without actually going to space or risking my life.
It's one of the clinical tools that I use, and which is also fits into my journey with meditation and presencing practices, stillness practices, is craniosacral work. I taught craniosacral work worldwide for years, and
I need that.
and
That's good.
it's lovely stuff, right? And one of the terms that I like to use for the experience of giving and receiving craniosacral work fits into this image that you just shared. I use the term grounded buoyancy. It's a lovely paradoxical. There's something zero gravity, but it's also grounded. And I just love it because there's space to move. There's space to be, to express, to become cosmic, to expand out into the great banging of the great everything, but also to keep the feet on the ground and stay connected in mutuality.
I was still bouncing.
Yeah. I'm a touch psychotherapist, right? I'll be doing craniosacral touch and, facilitating this grounded, buoyant space, and things just naturally unfold from there. And we don't necessarily need to have any content. Sometimes sessions are mainly silent.
Yeah, because it's not about the content at all. It's about the meeting. It's about the connection. It's about consistency. It's about commitment. This is much more important in a way. So this is like really foundation and way undervalued in therapy. People come often to therapy because they want to experience something, or they just want to, or to be healed or to be helped or whatever. But truly, what they often don't want is to be bored. And the best therapy sessions are boring, actually. But we are not talking about the same boredom that most people would understand. So boredom is actually the Big Bang. This completely boring experience. But we see boredom as something where nothing happens. Same like we think that emptiness is empty, right? If you, in the West you speak about emptiness, people think, oh, okay, it's empty. But the truth is that emptiness is never empty. So there is no emptiness, actually. That's why scientists never find anything empty in the world. So far, they have never found anything empty. Because in Buddhism, we know there is no emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. There is no form without emptiness. There is no emptiness without form. Form and emptiness are one. They're all the time. Any form, any emptiness is form. Any form is emptiness. So this is the boredom that we experience. What we actually experience is not boredom. We just experience our anxiety or indifference, and not true boredom. And in Zen we have this one kind of a koan, we can say, which is called the gateless gate. So what is the gateless gate? It sounds so amazing, like, oh, a gateless gate. If I go through that, then I will be enlightened.
The portal.
Yeah, the portal. I have to go through that and and the gateless gate is total boredom, totally being bored. Like in Zazen, you see people sitting on this very hard. I have to get to somewhere. I have to get to enlightenment. Like, and then something happens. Then, oh, you disturbed my enlightenment. It's very boring, actually. The experience of Zen is to get to a point, and then they look at the master. Wow, he's sitting so peacefully. Why is he so peaceful? Because he's bored. That's why. Because you're getting somewhere. You're trying to get somewhere. While the master, he is just bored. He is just fully bored of himself so much that he forgets himself. And boredom is the most important thing to teach. Boredom and fear. This is my main subjects I preach about in my work. So I want to spread it. I want to spread more fear, more depression, and more boredom in this world. If you ask me what I want to give to this world, what I want to talk about, what I want to give more to people, I want to give more depression, more fear, and more boredom. Why? because most people are not aware that they are actually depressed. Most people are not aware that they actually are afraid. And instead of being afraid, they just resist it. They are afraid of the fear, and they resist the fear. And they think fear is something bad. And they think boredom is bad. They think depression is bad, when depression actually leads you to deep rest and can lead you to great transformation. It can create great doubt. Who am I? What is this? Boredom. Oh, creativity. Wow, I do nothing and suddenly I see the cloud, and the cloud becomes a face, and the face becomes a whole story. Creativity comes from boredom. People are not bored anymore. They are constantly doing something, constantly thinking, studying, doing, and they say, oh, the youth now looks older than the older generation. Why is that? Because they're never bored. They're filling their mind constantly. They have the constant burnout. That's why they look old. Constantly, they're burnout. It's burned out. They just don't notice it because it's normal. It's a normality for them to be burned out. This is what I talk about. Become more afraid. Become real with your fear. Face your fear. Many people don't even know that they are afraid. I had a long time ago, I met a good friend, which I'm still in touch. She's a psychologist and neuroscientist. And we met at a party, at a cooking party. And I told her, you're afraid. She said, no, I have never been afraid. All my friends know I never ever any fear. And I studied psychology, and I studied neuro-linguistic science. So I talked myself out of fear. I said, yeah, you talked yourself out of fear, but you're not in your body. If you're not in your body, you're not aware of your fear. And Zen is not about becoming fearless. Zen is about becoming fearless to fear. You have fear, I have fear, you have fear. We are always having some fear. There's always some fear. But if I am not afraid of my fear, the fear becomes expansion, becomes power. That's why it's so beautiful to be right now between Brian and Jion. It's like cosmic orgasmic. It's beautiful. I love this. We love this, right? This beautiful connection. Why? It's because fear meets fear. That's where true intimacy happens. It's like, I want intimacy. Show me your fear. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I'm afraid. Wow, so beautiful. Now I feel connection. Now I don't need the mask anymore. Now I can meet, right? Truly in our fear. We can meet in our fear. We can meet in our love. We can meet in our heart. Truly meet.
And I like this as a relational element too, this idea of meeting in boredom. We contact each other in the boredom, then we have this bang. I like to think about,
wow.
Yeah, right? It was so boring that just like the constant treadmill of things being said and identities being cloned and propagated. And I'm thinking about the universe must be really bored before the Big Bang, and how creative that boredom became. It created an entire universe.
Boredom is emptiness. Basically, that's the emptiness. So there is no deeper emptiness than boredom. And that's the whole power of creativity.
I think boredom has a lot to do with...
I'm honest with you. It took me a long time to get to this understanding. Really long time. Because for me, being on the spiritual side an overachiever, because I started very quickly with spirituality and went to the monastery and all this very young. But actually, the polarity was that I was extremely afraid of emptiness and boredom and death. And that's what gave me that whole drive to go this way, all this way, So nowadays, because boredom is not a problem anymore, I have less motivation. Then I need someone like you to talk to, and then I feel this boredom, and this boredom gives me energy, as you see.
May the whole world experience a giant wave of boredom.
Please.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I sign up to that.
Hmm. Yeah, I like to say to students when I'm teaching the neuroscience stuff that, you expand your ability to be bored, you expand your ability to be joyful. And there's dopamine discourse in it if we want to talk about the science, right? But I mean, I'm bored with dopamine discourse.
That's the problematic with boredom is that if you teach someone to be bored, what happens usually is first that all the trauma, all the fears, all the resistances come forth, all the coping mechanisms come forth. So then, and panic and whatever you are resisting, because that when you enter that gate or when you are in front of that gate, suddenly you get afraid. So, and then memories come and emotions come that you suppressed for such a long time. That's why it's not so easy to get into that. You have to first work therapeutically on the psychological body. And then only once that is healed enough, then you can enter into more truly boring states, right?
It takes work to get bored. It takes work
Yeah.
to get usefully bored.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah, it takes work to get bored in a useful way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the gateless gate, you mentioned dying, and you've sat with folks, and this is one of the things that you offer is sitting with folks in the space of death, which is quite a gate. And one of a couple of really transformative moments in my career is, for example, I had a client that I worked with for 4 years in psychotherapy. And then I had the honor and the privilege to sit with this person as they were dying. And it was just extraordinary. It was beautiful. It was real. Wow. What an honor. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to offer holding in the space of dying?
So for me, I was dreaming about death since I was like little, and since I remember, I was dreaming about it, not because I was suicidal, because I felt I am not just the body, I am not just this mind. And I didn't know anything about it because at that time I was little and I didn't know anything about spirituality. I had no spiritual family or uh, guides or teachers or father or mother, anything like that. So I just felt I'm not the body, not the mind. I felt trapped in my body. I felt I'm crazy, and because everyone else didn't seem to have a problem with it, only me. So in my environment, and I was dreaming about being dead. And what is beyond death? I was really, really curious. What is it? What's the meaning of working, studying, making money, having a family, and then dying, losing everything in the end? So why would I do all of that? Why would I pursue all of that if everything is gone in the end, right? What's the meaning? Then why not just die? So for me, this question really ruminated in my mind over and over. What is death? Yeah, that's how my Zen practice started before I even knew about Zen. And I came in touch with Mother Teresa. I found interesting what she was doing. She was working with dying people. I liked that idea. And after my practice in a monastery in Japan, I decided, I read a book from her, Come and Be My Light, which I can recommend. It's a very nice book. And where she was really honest. Actually, she didn't want to publish that book. It was her memoir, like her diary, basically. But in that book, you could see that she was very much a human being and not a saint or special person. And I felt very connected with her as a human. And so that made me even more want to go down to India. I went to India, to Calicut, where she was opening her first hospice. And I worked there as a volunteer for a while. And I had as well the same kind of experience like you. And then later I studied in Germany, dying companion and counseling in a Buddhist kind of counseling medical school, and then also in a normal one as well. But then I noticed that I could not really apply and have the same depth of experience and connection with the people in Germany, because mostly they are morphine. It's very different than in India, in Kaligat. So many do not want to face death at all. And so the last experience that I had before I left, thanks to that lady who I worked with, she said, I really love to meet with you, but I don't want to face my emotions and my past. And every time you come into the room, that's what I feel. Your presence just makes me feel that, and I don't want it. My choice is not to feel it and just die without facing it. And she said it with crying eyes. And in that moment, I realized that I have to leave it as well, that work. And that's how I left. Because I was working in the hospice, so at that time.
There's a dignity to that choice. I was working with methamphetamine dependent person, and they just gave it a heroic effort over the course of years. And this person came to me one session after they had been sober for quite some time and said, I really appreciate your work, and it's been just so wonderful, and you're such a great person. But you know what? I'm going to go use. I've been doing it for 20 years, and that's what I know. I know this life. This is what I love about being. So thank you. Blessings to you. Goodbye. And I was just like, there can be so much judgment about various ways of being or various ways of doing things or style of life. But over some time reflecting on it, I started to notice how I got pulled into that kind of like, oh, I could have done better, or what didn't I, like, oh, what he chose to go the different direction than he should have gone or something. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sitting there going, like, this insight came, just like, no, there's dignity to that choice.
Maybe there is nothing to that choice.
Maybe there's nothing. Maybe it's all emptiness.
Yeah. Complete emptiness. Vast. Yeah. So for me, it was similar. And then I had many expectations. I thought I need to help people, or I had still this idea of helping people or liberating people, because I thought if I can have this experience, and why not everyone else? But that was also one of my driving factors to come to practice. But once I stopped suffering as much as I did before, all that idea of helping others dissipated. And that happened actually after like 3 months of monastic practice. I started to not be interested anymore to help anyone. I realized, actually, I wanted only to help because I was helpless. And I wanted to get the people saying, wow, you're such a great helper, and you helped us, and bath in their awareness and their love, and appreciation, attaining something, being someone, being loved. So in that moment, when I stopped suffering as much as I did before, all of that dissipated. And I wanted to leave the monastery, and my teacher said, you just started. This is nothing. When he told me that, I trusted him. Luckily, I had a good teacher. Because if I would have left, I would have just been in my spiritual ego. And that's it. Nowadays, when I work with someone, I don't have any expectation at all. And at the same time, I have expectations, of course, but I'm not sticking to them. I don't think, oh, today I meet Brian and I'm going to speak about this or that. And I had no preparation, and we had no preparation. We didn't even met each other. And yet it feels like we know each other forever, right? And that's how it feels to me. So it's beautiful. And I love this. I love this connection and this this way of meeting people and meeting myself in people and you and me and so forth. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dying, there's such a gateless gate to that. Asking myself about death and dreaming about death, thinking about death, encountering death naked. Like I really love Paul Tillich's phrase, in touch with the naked absolute. In touch with the naked absolute. It's just such a beautiful phrase. Like if you and I have the courage to just be in touch with the naked absolute and there's contact there that can be scary as hell.
The beauty here is that the connection. So what we often forget is that dying is never alone. It never happens alone. Even if you die alone, it never happens alone. Because we are never alone. And if you're a woman and you think about pregnancy, it's scary. If you are a man and you think about pregnancy, you have 2 children, so you probably saw how it works. It's so scary. But then when you're actually there, you see it's just things happen. And and in that moment, there is a connection with the body, with your hormones, with life. And suddenly it just unfolds with the help of other people, usually also. And that's what Zen is teaching us. Zen is not just about learning how to die, it's also learning how to connect within death. And that's why the idea of practicing Zen by yourself in the mountain secluded is not the idea of Zen. That is an idea of the forest traditions of Highland or so. Zen is all about connection, meditating with others, within the Sangha, within the community, with other people, until you reach that level of connection, which is so strong that it is internal, that you don't necessarily need anymore. So for me, like now I meet you, it's a connection, and that connection gives me power. It gives me much more power than I would have by myself. And if I die by myself, I connect with the whole world, everything, with the whole universe, with the consciousness itself. So in that moment, I become greater than myself. And then I have much greater power, and surrender comes easy. But if I am a small self, if I am very much stuck in myself, and on top of that, a lot of stuck emotions, suppressed memories, suppressed unconsciousness, resistance towards myself, towards life, then yes, of course, death is very difficult because you cannot connect to anywhere because there is such a big pile on top of you that you cannot go into this natural being of connecting. Because when you die, it's this natural process. The body starts to help you. The consciousness, all your bodies start to help you. Energetical body, your consciousness body, spiritual body, physical, psycho, all the bodies start to help you if you have a flow, if you are a superconductor. But if you have a lot of resistance because you haven't prepared yourself, working on yourself, then it will be very difficult because you face all the resistances. You don't face death. You don't face death at all. You just face all the fears that you didn't look at, all the resistances, all the emotions that you have suppressed. That's what you fear. So for many people, they say death is horrible. Yes, it's horrible because you are not facing death. You're facing the resistance. Death is actually absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful process. So beautiful that in the moment when you are actually entering it, you don't want to come back. You don't want to come back to life. It's because it's so powerful. It's like ultimately pure unconditional love. And you're just not just in it, you are it, and everything is in it, everything. And it's so powerful that in the moment you feel just a fraction of it, it kills you basically. It kills your body. It kills all your bodies. It wants to get you free you completely from all the bodies, and then you have to make a choice. Do I have still a mission here, something to do, or is it now for me time to go?
Yeah.
So then it's preparation for death. Psychology, therapy ultimately is preparation for death. Philosophy, as Michel de Montaigne said, is preparation for death. And death is nothing scary. Death is only scary for people who face resistances, who face their emotions that they suppressed, which they didn't work on. It has nothing to do with death. Most people never experience actually death, even if they die. They just experience the agony, the resistances that they have piled up all over their life, their whole life. Piled up, never looked at anything, resisted, and then they face that agony. It has nothing to do with death. Of course, there is also some fear, saying like me, Jion, me meeting Brian. But that fear helps you if you have no resistance to the fear. Again, you use the fear to build up energy. It will give you energy to even easier surrender and expand even faster. That's all. So the fear is completely basic and is not in any way fearful.
One of the popular classes of drug compounds used in hospice is antipsychotics.
In
psychological theory. In America, yeah. Is that the resistances to the fear and the terror just crack the egg, and people just go berserk. My dad, when he was dying, he just got crazy, and he was writhing because he was a Catholic man. In the still moments of the night, he just writhed and writhed. So they ended up giving him an antipsychotic. And I was talking to some of the hospice nurses, and they're telling me how common using Depakote and other antipsychotics are. And it makes sense from...
He basically did in one day or a couple days the whole thing that we do. Butoh dance, therapy work, all the things. But you cannot do it in 2 days.
Writhing.
Yeah, we go crazy. And then on top of that, it's not like you're going to the Butoh class consciously and with awareness. No, you're forced into it. So it's like having a trip, like taking ayahuasca or LSD or whatever, having a trip, but not actually wanting or being aware of that. And that's, of course, can make you crazy. It's horrible. Like, for me, I tried ayahuasca a couple times. It didn't do anything. It didn't have the same experience I have right now. I was just floating, and it was a very beautiful experience. Yeah, sure, some snake came or something disgusting came, but I had no reaction. So it dissipated immediately because it couldn't trap me, and I had no fear of that because I know all that. I face it. That's all. I know how to face it. I know how to allow it. I don't need to fight it. And then it dissipates. But when people take ayahuasca, they see dragons and disgusting things, and it's horrible, and they're screaming and blah, and of course, because you have so much resistance inside of you, right? So to the fear, to the things that you see, and then But so people who have this, they become psychotic. They take antipsychotic medicine because they do therapy work that usually takes 20 years, 30 years. They do it in 3 days, 4 days, 1 week, 10 days, whatever. It's just not enough. And of course, it's too much.
It's been said, and I totally agree with this, that letting go of a psychological defense is like dying. And I really like this image of, when I'm up against the wall or I'm just holding on or something, I have a therapist like you or a friend like you who can just hold me through it as though I were thrashing through death. And there's this deep intimacy in these dying moments. If the practitioner doesn't run in to rescue or something like that, or try to be a powerful therapist or something, but just sit there and hold the intensities and just be there. There's just tremendous intimacy there. Yeah. I love it when you talk about a bunch of stuff and then it just happens, the stuff that you've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a love story.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rilke, the great poet Rilke, had a mentor.
A German poet.
And yeah, it was a poet and a fiction writer, Jacobson, I believe his name was, who wrote Niels Lynn, which is this extraordinary book, Niels Lynn, about two poets that fell in love, and they write all this amazing poetry and have this incredible intimacy. And then the author takes you into this moment of the woman is dying. So they've had this extraordinary life together with such deep intimacy and love and connection. And now she's dying. And at the moment of death, and as the moment she's rolling into death, she turns away from her beloved and asks for a priest. The way that the author speaks about it is just heart-wrenching, because as the one who's reading and experiencing with this couple, I experience it as this tragic loss, because the most intimate moment that could be there for the couple, death, it's when she turned away from the intimacy of being there with her beloved and chose a different beloved, essentially, which is, there's dignity to that as well. If I put myself into the shoes of Niels Lynn, how aching that could be if somebody chose intimacy with somebody else at this precious, intimate moment. So you've lived many lives and therefore many deaths. You grew up in Japan?
Also, yeah, I grew up in Japan, you can say that. I studied there. So I lived there in a monastery. And I grew up in the Soviet Union, into a Jewish family. My father is American.
Вы говорите по-русски?
Да, я говорю по-русски.
Maybe I shouldn't have used the formal, but my wife is Russian, so I've been studying for a few years.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I have family all over the world. So I actually born in Moldova, so Transnistria. Officially, it's no state at all. My family went to Germany, my father to America. And I grew up in Germany. Then I went to Japan and studied there and then traveled all over the world. And my wife is Romanian. So when I went first time to visit actually Moldova, Transnistria, for the first time when I was adult, and then I met my wife. So after going to my birthplace, I met my wife, and we live in Romania. We have some land here with a lake, and my intention would be to build some like kind of a temple at some point to make a practice place for people to come and teach and learn, enjoy each other. That would be my dream right now. And yeah, I have my book, but my book is not finished. I'm working on it still 10 years already. Zen Therapy Koans. It's much bigger than, it's double the size already. So this is just the older version of it. And
beautiful.
yeah, it's not out. And now that I have a child, which is very young, it takes a bit more time to work on it because I have also my students worldwide. I'm working on it. Maybe in 1-2 years, I should be kind of finished with it. Though it's never finished, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Russian was your first language.
Yeah.
It's good to know that about you. There's another connection there because, my little girl, Russian is her first language. We have a Russian daycare out in the backyard right now with kids running about speaking Russian.
Right.
That's her first language.
Yeah, well, my son's first language is English because I don't speak Romanian and my wife doesn't speak German she speaks actually German now. We lived in Berlin for a while, but English is my favorite language actually, besides Japanese. Yeah, Japanese is kind of my spiritual language. Like it's like maybe my past life language. I don't know because it's really I feel very connected to the Japanese whole culture. Not so much the new culture. And the second is English. I love English. It's simple. It's very simple, and I like this ordinary simplicity of it. While Russian or other languages are much more complicated, and I like the simplicity of English, and I like that I can speak to anyone really English. So reaching the world is really nice.
Well, it means a lot coming from you. You speak 46 languages or something?
I didn't count it. I'm not good in counting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't ask my age. Don't ask me for my age. Yeah? I have to ask my wife.
Yeah. Okay, I won't ask. If I meet your wife someday, I will.
I'm older than you think.
Okay. In your journey, your spiritual journey, you had this early encounter with death. You went to the monastery in Japan. When did you know that you wanted to be a therapist?
Oh, it came very simple. My mother, I was 7, 8 years old. She was crying. She was depressed. She was very too young to be a mother, and she was on her own in Germany without her family. She was depressed. So she came to me. She didn't know what to do. She just came to me, and I hugged her, and I just cared for her. In psychology, you would call it kind of a parentification, whatever. Sure, yeah, but it's not necessarily a bad thing if you can heal and grow out of it. So I was led into it by life and being at a party or gatherings with people. Every time someone comes to me and tells me their life story, tells me their problems, maybe because I was really boring, because I had nothing to say about myself, really, because I didn't know nothing about me. And the only hobby I had was just reading books at that time. So then people, always came to me from the beginning. And then I went to Japan. I came back after the training, and I really had no idea of what I am going to do after. And I was tired and uh, of Zen. I didn't want to teach Zen. I didn't want to talk about Zen at that time when I came back. It wasn't enough for me about Zen. And so then what I did was I went to just become a bartender, not a bartender, in a restaurant, bringing the food for a while. And then people came to me and wanted to talk to me. And it happened that so much that the boss of the restaurant, the owner of the restaurant, wanted to kick me out because I became more popular than him. So everyone wanted to talk to me. And so and then at some point, I was asked if I could help someone who had depression, who was in the clinic. He was a doctor himself, but he had depression, and he was in a clinic, in a fancy clinic, and the therapists couldn't do anything. They couldn't help him, so they just gave him cocktails and drugs, and so they asked me if I could help him because they knew that I went my story, and that I was depressed when I was young, from 13 to 23. Yeah, so about 10 years. And I said, okay, I can try. And so I went to the clinic and I worked with this guy and I helped him. And since then, yeah, that's how it started. But before that, it started I already basically did it. It's just that I wasn't aware of seeing it as a job or making like a living out of it, or seeing myself as a therapist at all. I just did it naturally. And then with that incident with this person, that's how it developed.
Beautiful. Well, thanks so much for sharing yourself and for just showing up how you show up.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice. I like it a lot. So we should meet again.
Yeah, that would be great. Anything else you want to share with the listeners? You got your book, in the pipeline. Anything else that you'd like to invite from the folks out there?
I think that's it. I have nothing more to say. Really.
Maybe we'll just end with may there be a great wave of boredom coming your directions, creative boredom.
Yeah, not even creative, just feel
okay,
bored.
Just leave it at that. No qualification, just may there be a great wave of boredom coming your way.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. Good to meet you. See you again sometime.
Thank you for listening to The Boundless Body with the Somatic Doctor. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and like us on social media.
We're a swarm. We're a colony. We're a multiplicity.
Until next time, be well.